Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all nice and cozy there. Delighted to speak to you this morning. You know, it's truly an honor for me to be asked by Howard to join you. This great industry of ours has been my continuous passion for all of my working life. And he's just told me I need to get to the 40 years, which I'm racing towards now, to be in the Hall of Fame. But I was thrilled by Howard to be your keynote speaker, to be asked by him this year. This is my fourth decade, as I've just admitted to, endeavouring to help the consumer electronics business to grow and prosper, mostly in the UK. And that means I started way back in the 1980s. And since then, we've seen huge lifestyle changes that have been shaped by many of the products that we sell. The overall mass adoption of various technologies has influenced society in profound and sometimes unexpected ways. Today, I'm going to share my thoughts on where we're up to on that journey and what will be required of us as we face the next adoption dilemma. As we seek to deliver the connected home and truly realize what some people are calling the third age of technology, what are some of the key challenges? But just before I do that, I should explain that when Howard asked me to be here earlier this summer, I was genuinely on garden leave, having finished with my old friends at Samsung. I think I even ran in from cutting the grass to take his call. Nice surprise. It was, in fact, a busy summer of talking to friends about what to do next. And with uncanny timing, I can reveal that I've been appointed as the CEO of Glen Dimplex Consumer Appliances last week, with all of its fascinating brands and products. So I'm delighted to be working with all of you again on a next exciting chapter. It's great to have a new challenge, and I'm really looking forward to working with you guys representing this great company. So let's turn to consider this moment in time, where we sit here today. It's October 2016. Where are we up to? We see, I've got a couple of GFK slides, thanks to Nick Simon, when I was on garden leave. I can't do a presentation without some GFK without coming out in a rash. But I've managed to limit it to 2 of these. And just to show that, you know, a massive global business that's become completely ubiquitous, dominates large parts of our lives. Where we're up to on it, though, is even with the August figures, which Nick kindly shared with me, there are some slight ups and downs, but we have a balance of mature markets, saturated markets, which I'm going to talk to you about, replacement markets largely, and the growth is under pressure at this point. So I want to consider that context as we go through. You know, during the digital age, the second age of technology, after analog, the internet and mobile technologies, especially the all-conquering smartphone, have created the always-on culture we now enjoy and sometimes struggle with. The global scale of our business and the fascination in it from consumers creates huge spends that take up growing ratios of people's disposable income. This leaves us with increasing power and responsibility to the world we live in. Looking at those markets in the UK during 2016, our consumer has been a little more hesitant, a little more distracted. But it's not all about Brexit. I believe there are a number of factors at play today which represent strong signposts for consumer behaviour going forward into 2017 and indeed 2018, especially for the UK and Irish markets. Got to mention my friends in Ireland now, haven't I? And I want to have a look through some of the mega and key trends through to perhaps 2020 that we can all absorb and think about today. And I'm going to talk about 4 in the small amount of time that Howard's given me today. First of all, what about that market saturation and maturity? We're going to have a look at that and the behaviours we should think about in that context. From a generation that was very much about ownership and materialism to a generation that isn't and is much more about experiential. And what does that mean for the way we present ourselves? to have a look at this market and how London has dominated, London and the South East has dominated the picture for the last few years, but I believe there'll be much more of a move to regional and the realization of the northern powerhouse. There's a couple of fundamental reasons that that will be interesting. And of course, the big one of today, your theme, the emergence of the automated home. So let's have a look perhaps at each of these in turn. Now, market saturation, the maturity of many of our markets, is a reality for the remainder of this decade. At the same time, that's a big pool of demand that's ready for upgrade and replacement. The opportunity for reward in this phase of the market cycle is to sell up to that new version of the same appliance. The alternative from the dark side is commoditization and the constant loss of value. Manufacturers and retailers stimulating this value equation can profit from the scale, the sheer size of these markets for many years. All it needs is some imagination and a little bit of discipline. Two, let's have a look at where we are in terms of being surrounded by disruptive business models and retail offerings, including the likes of Airbnb, Uber, and the generic reality of omni-channel customer journeys that are now the norm, and as largely invented, by the way, here in the UK, the king of omni-channel, the inventor of omni-channel. What great retail innovation we have seen here, taking on the threat of the US, creatively with a real customer-focused mindset. That's the sort of thing I love to see. In the wider context, what's going on out there outside of electricals? There is a world, you know, outside of electricals. This season's disappointing fashion sales point towards a shopped-out consumer. People talk about this consumer who simply doesn't need more things. Traditional wisdom tells us about our real competition for people's discretionary spend is, of course, other consumer products and services. The next generation has its own values and motivations. Eating out, vacations, live music, live sport, a better work-life balance have all become more important to people who yearn for experiences more than things. Let's understand that the psychology of the post-recession consumer is different and has also delivered a new generation of millennials. I haven't got long enough to tell you about my three sons and the way they think about the world. It's different to the way we think about the world. They have their own wonderful values and their own personal motivators. It's fascinating. Your store and website today must be a great experience, and crucially, that must be followed through in the customer's home. A comment on London to regional. Is that really going to happen? Well, I think if you look at 10 to 20-year cycles, it's fascinating to see what they can realize. If you follow them, and I'm a great fan of it, you soon understand the peaks in today's trends, and therefore where else new growth will come, can come for tomorrow. Now London, where I come from, stuttered after the Lehman Brothers collapse of 2008 and the recession that followed. It had been strong before then made a dramatic recovery since the London Olympic Games of 2012, which changed the mood, changed the sentiment of the country. We all remember that, I'm sure. What a wonderful summer. But this global capital of ours, in terms of its time zone, has now paused again for breath, with house prices in central London expecting a correction of between 10 and 15% declines this year. Dramatic changes. Like any mature or temporarily saturated market, it enjoys scale and muscle, but it will struggle for further growth. This growth word is so key in terms of where the money goes in the midterm. Because of London's growth spurt, the gap now visible for the regions must be filled as businesses look for value and more efficient returns on that capital. This likely investment cycle will help to further stimulate the UK economy, I think. It represents a real upside for the majority of our population. Now, I'm supposed to talk about also the emergence of the connected home today. You know, it's a game changer, period. Product capability, customer experience, It's also so fundamentally far-reaching that we will look back in 10 years and be amazed at the way we used to do things, the way we used to live. So old-fashioned, perhaps, we will think. But that's also why it will take time to build. It's that big. Time to build, time to properly implement. I thought that the recent edition of ERT was an excellent read from Sean when we were looking at, he's done an excellent job at summarising the various dimensions that will need to be covered. Don't worry, I'll not go over them all again here this morning, but it's a reminder that yes, there is a lot of stuff to do. Ignore it at your peril? I think so, but it's also the biggest opportunity for profitable channel engagement in 20 years. That's how big it is. Let me explain why I think that. Now, although the Internet of Things is today at a relatively embryonic stage, the fact is, from a product development perspective, this is simply the next natural capability coming out of the R&D labs, for those of you who like wandering around them. You know, today's smart products, which aggregate content and manipulate software, have already given us unparalleled access to information and experience for the masses. Experiences for the masses, for everybody. So consider that these same products will take this established use, already out there, and extend that to the more automatic connection and communication with many other products. Suggests to me that the well-positioned connected products should extend the smart capability and make it more accessible. The poignancy of this next step, therefore, can I suggest, be described as from smart to connected, and encapsulates our challenge as an industry. I think this could be less mysterious and more readily understood by people, including us. So for you guys, that should be nothing to be afraid of, right? However, what we certainly need is to redefine the customer offering. Pre-sale, that crucial research phase of today, as a buying experience, the point of purchase, and dramatically change post-sale. Specifically, that means educating and providing as much rich and often digital information as your hungry customer needs and demands. Look through the window. They have gifted you to continuously connect with them, interactively and largely on their mobile phone. But also, I think, through shows, exhibitions that fire those emotional responses and show those experiences. Then take this in-store and work with great brands to truly develop experiential retail that brings scenarios to life, practically and meaningfully. Consumers still demand to try it for themselves. Now, this personal contact gives you the chance to pursue the post-sale solution. This can take many forms, but is inspired by the philosophy that a confirmed sale is just the start of getting to know your customer. Here is your chance to build a multi-layered and long-term relationship with bespoke packages and bundles. So here's a job I could suggest for Howard to help with, I think. Trade bodies can play a leading role in establishing a new kind of transaction that leads consumers on to this next chapter. Some estimates I've seen anticipate that more than 60% of the value could be realized outside of the box you sell, not just inside of it. Wouldn't it be great to see that service is going to make a great comeback, but with a new architecture and business model? I think we'll be hearing a bit more about that later on today. You know, we talked a lot at Samsung about how you might execute this kind of offer, and every time we came back to the need for open software platforms, open architecture that give consumers real choice across their brands and at their own speed as they navigate gradually away from the multitude of the pre-installed, non-connected products. Is there then more of a chance for a less inward-looking group of companies, and instead an industry that delights in putting the consumer first and collaborates more positively where appropriate, particularly in store, I would suggest, and at consumer shows. Let's dare to dream, shall we? Because I think that is so possible, and Retra can play a key role with your support in marshalling this to achieve a meaningful direction. Another nice one for Howard. Lots of jobs for you today, Howard, from me. So it's clear that this will need some working out, and we do have time. But all of us should approach 2020 and beyond with a spirit of renewal and optimism. Today, we must focus on the more familiar path of servicing consumers with the best high-quality premium solutions that deliver a brilliant experience and result in generating trust and satisfaction in people's homes. You're all very good at that. We started with a small market review, and we talked about the scale and diversity of electricals that has reached a size and mass that we could not have imagined when I started work back in my first shop, here's a confession, a Rumbelow store back in 1978. Great days. Then we talked about the maturity that pervades many of our markets, recognizing that by the very nature of that stage, they are ultra-competitive with many players, some of whom only focus on price. Often, in various consumer markets, as you look around, this becomes a period of consolidation and restructuring. Now, we have certainly seen that, haven't we? Huge changes in the channel mix, even in the last 5 years. Where does that fit in? I mean, I think I had a look at other parallel industries, a very close one, and they're finding this topping out process, this mature topping out process, as very painful, such as the mobile phone industry. Let's talk about that, as Declan's already referred to. I have been a fascinated observer as we reached this pivotal point on smartphones, when the growth in volume disappears and previously profitable returns evaporate. New challenges develop, especially considering this particularly globalized market. Now, most of us in this room will now understand how operators such as Vodafone and BT have sought to redefine the contract proposition. You know, initially we saw SIM-only deals become popular, and now the quad-play proposition is being developed as the key tool to lock consumers in to valuable and reliable revenue streams. Actually, the last thing on their priority list has been selling phones, I can assure you. And previously, huge subsidies on handsets have virtually disappeared. Operators now behave more like general utility companies in many ways as they deal with huge numbers of consumers. So interestingly, in that equation, customers remain stubbornly passionate about the latest handsets, and the high proportion of top-end phones lusted after give the market a healthy shape and slows the risk of commoditization, even with the emphasis basically on two brands in that market. We do have even closer examples with the merger of DSG and Carphone Warehouse to become the very successful Dixon's Carphone operation. They have brought together many of these market components and highlighted their need to offer the widest possible range in the market. Friends in the industry explained their reaction to this by saying to me, you know, Andy, I think we need to go bigger or smaller as a business. And you hear those conversations, don't you? I generally agree. I think, of course, we embody a very broad church, but real specialists will always have an appeal to discerning consumers when you add value and convenience. On the other hand, size and scale will always allow you more coverage and give you more chances to win. Hey, the only constant is change, and I know you think deeply about the best efficiencies for your operation. I would always suggest working closely with brands and co-investing in your retail experience, treating it as a continuous improvement program. That includes our most precious of resources, our people. We need more young people here, Howard, don't we, at the conference itself. Shame on us if we're not training and motivating the next generation to become the most dynamic and knowledgeable of any retail staff That should be our advantage. The best news for us veterans is that once more our exciting products will continue to reimagine, innovate, and break barriers. They will keep coming. New markets will surprise and astound consumers. We must keep the curiosity that captures this mood in an industry that has moulded and will continue to mould the society we live in. Thank you very much.
Andy, thank you very much for that invigorating start to the day. You talked about change being a constant, and different people react to change in different ways. Some in this room will be invigorated by it, some will have been bruised by it. Your impression appeared to be there's really not much point in fighting it, in being angry about it. What you need to do is get on with it.
Yeah, I think so, Declan. The coming change, we can see it ahead. We have time to react, but it is very fundamental. I know a senior retail head described it recently as the £1 billion opportunity. So it is that huge. I think this industry is generally good at change. I mean, because there are rarely 2 years that are exactly the same, right? There's a continuous path of innovation and new products flowing into the market. But when you're changing from analog to digital, for example, back in the early part of the 2000s, the noughties, there were some people who made it through that transition, and there were some people who are left behind. There were some brands, right, who were left behind as those bigger waves came through. I think the same is likely in this move to the connected home, because it asks different questions of people, and it demands a different understanding of who our consumers are for the next 5, 10 years. But there is time to get ready for it.
I just wonder what the role for independent retailers is in that process, as manufacturers do more direct retail themselves, as they do more to take control of the relationship with the customer, as they try to own the customer. Where does the independent retailer fit into that?
Well, they've got to deliver it. They've got to execute it. I think as an industry, when we're at our best, we are connecting with consumers properly, with serious campaigns, with great shows, great experiences for them. When we're at our worst, we're very insular and inward-looking, and we focus on internal operations and smaller squabbles. So the thing to do is look at the bigger picture and connect with consumers out there who are desperate for the help in this room about how you really implement that home by home. Even the millennials who think they know it all and are growing through their student accommodation and their first rented home will become full human beings soon and build proper homes with proper needs in them. I'm just talking about my boys, not your children, I'm sure. But these waves are still to come, and I would suggest still to be enjoyed.
There'll still be annoying know-it-alls, though, even when that happens. But you're optimistic. You are, in your nature, optimistic about the future.
Yeah, I am a bit of an optimist, Declan, but I think these big changes drive consumer engagement, interest, and then feed through to demand. It's the way this industry has survived and prospered over the years, by continuously reinventing itself. The only difference with this one is it's a big one, and that should be good for us over the next 5 to 10 years.
Andy Griffiths, thank you very much. Thank you. Actually, that's an interesting question to put to all of you in the room. Just find your keypads again. I'm going to ask you a question, and the answer will be yes, no, or don't know. And the question is this: are you optimistic about what the future holds for your business? Pick one of those four. Yes, no, maybe, or don't know are your 4 options. Are you optimistic about what the future holds for your business? Start the voting now, please. 63% of you are. There seem to be more maybes than there are no. I assume that's, we could count maybes as a possible yes, I suppose, in this one. But overwhelmingly optimistic, 63% optimistic about the future. That's a good place from which to base our discussions this morning. Thank you for taking part in that vote. Just to say, the details of all our speakers are in your programme if you need more information about any of them. We're going to talk a bit more now about the connected home, and we do that in the company of Ashley Shorey-Mills from Hughes Smart Homes. He's been developing the smart home market for Hughes for several years now, and Stuart Tickle from AWE, which is a smart home technology distribution and training company. Welcome, please, Ashley and Stuart.